Yesterday in the National Football League was a day of introduction for 4 NFL teams. The Cowboys, the Jets, the Raiders, and the Jags, all introducing their new head coach and general manager to everybody, to the media, to the fan base, to the National Football League as a whole. So here, for the entirety of this opening hour, we will go to all 4 spots in Dallas, Jacksonville, New York, and of course, Las Vegas, to hear from those individuals. And Donnie, of course, we have to start at the Star. It was one of the weirdest scenes you will ever see yesterday in Dallas. It was basically Jerry Jones trying to prove to everybody once again while he calls the shot, why he has the power to make these coaching decisions. And it was awkward from the very start. Here were the guys getting out on stage just to introduce Brian Schottenheimer. I believe there it is. Look at all of them kind of sitting down, hanging out. You've got Steven, Jerry's kid. You've got Brian Schottenheimer in the middle. And, of course, Jerry Jones on the far right. Weird. I mean, all of that is, you've got the big room. All of that is super, super strange. And Donnie, as we said, we're not trying to slander Brian Schottenheimer. We'll hear from Dallas's new head coach in just a moment. But it's the situation in the atmosphere behind this coaching hiring that led to a super weird press conference yesterday.
But I don't mind the setup, but we have an issue with the setup out there for what they have? Like, what was the issue for you on them sitting down together in those chairs? Do you have an issue with that?
No, I don't have an issue with that. I don't think Stephen Jones needs to be there. He doesn't do anything except being daddy's errand boy. I think it's the fact they sit down, right? Here we go. All of us all together. Stephen Jones really doesn't do anything. They sit here. Nobody shakes hands. They go down, and now Brian Schottenheimer's like, this is weird.
Got the big room.
Let me tap you guys. And then Jerry goes, you've got the big room, as in like, welcome to being the Cowboys' new head coach.
Yeah, like if we're reading body language too, like the fact that Jerry Jones needs to drink water immediately the second he sits down means like, oh boy, this is going to be tough. I better prepare myself because I'm going to get questions, as opposed to probably let me sit down and be like, you know what? Let me start this press conference off myself. We just hit the biggest home run in Dallas Cowboys history right now with this head coaching hire of Ben Johnson. Oops, didn't work out that way.
Absolutely so. When you are drinking water, you are getting ready to speak a ton. And Donnie, an introductory press conference should be the best one of your career. It should be excitement. It should be optimism. It should be questions about the direction of a franchise from a positive perspective. From the very jump, it was not that yesterday at the Star. But again, here is Brian Schottenheimer, a guy that has worked in Dallas the last 3 years, the previous 2 as the offensive coordinator, on his direction for Dallas moving forward.
You don't belong in this organization if you don't value relationships. This business has never been about X's and O's. It's about people. And when I thought about it, I can't imagine sitting up here with a better group of people, a better family to do this with. So I thank you guys for that opportunity. And lastly, the type of people that we want, people that love this game. The game of football has given me so much, my family so much, but if you're not passionate about the game of football and the shield and what it represents, then you're probably in the wrong line of business.
You take Brian Schottenheimer for his word. Of course, his father, Marty Schottenheimer, a legend in head coaching circles around the National Football League. Schottenheimer himself has been in the NFL since 1997, 24 years as an assistant, nearly a decade and a half working as an offensive coordinator. A big opportunity for him, but you heard it right there. I could not think of a better family to be around. That is why he is the head coach of the Dallas Cowboys, because he still believes in Jerry Jones.
Yeah, and you would if he hired you and paid you all that money to say, you know what, coach my football team. He's not going to sum up there. You know what, man, I looked around the league. It's a shame Sirianni has never gotten fired there. I always wanted that job, but had to settle for the Dallas Cowboys, and maybe I'll be the first one to make it back to the Super Bowl. Now, there is something of that, cachet being the Cowboys coach, even though for the past 30 years it's been a disaster job overall because you can't win anything and you're expected to win, and you go back to the 1990s when that's some success, and now there's no success at this point. So I think he's actually actually coming in at a good time. Because let's just say he was, 4 out of the last 5 years, or like a Kansas City type Super Bowl run in Dallas. Like, ooh, I have a lot of expectations to hold up to. You have no expectations in Dallas. It should be a dream job because, yes, it's an NFL head coaching job, but what are your parameters? If you get to an NFC championship game, do they build a statue outside the stadium for Brian Schottenheimer? Because 99.9% of Dallas fans today have never seen a Super Bowl championship, let alone an NFC championship appearance. So as long as he comes in and can possibly get them to one over the next 2 to 3 years, he's a legend in Dallas. That's a loser franchise.
Absolutely so, DRS, because they have not reached a conference championship since 1995. But it was very simple, and Jerry Jones understood what the question would be. How did you get Brian Schottenheimer? Why did you hire Brian Schottenheimer? What was the scenario behind this decision? All right, Jerry, take it away.
Now, proverbial ass kick over needing people in my comfort zone. Without this thing being about me in any way, if you don't think I can't operate out of my comfort zone, you're so wrong. It's unbelievable. This is as big a risk as you could take. As big a risk as you could take. No head coaching experience. Now, let me share something with you. With all of that, you've just heard him reference his osmosis, his family. Anybody in this room that doesn't believe the apple doesn't go far from the tree has missed it someplace down the road, especially if there was an effort to make it that way, and there was an effort. But then you go around to the countless numbers of coaches that Schotty has served on staff with and been around, the countless players. How often do you have someone that has 25, I'm going to say 25, it may be 26, of years of working through the human relationship and working, aspiring to learn, of have his ears and eyes wide open and looking for techniques and looking for things that make coaches better.
We wanted you to hear all of that. We're coming up on the commercial break. Our reactions to what Jerry Jones had to say yesterday in Dallas, yeah, those are coming up now. 4 new NFL head coaches introduced yesterday at their various new jobs, including in Dallas, in what a theatrical show it was. Right before the commercial break, we played you a 1:17 video, an answer from Jerry Jones that was a part, Donnie, of a 10-minute emotional ramble that led Jerry Jones to have some tears, that led to Jerry Jones basically telling everybody, you don't know ball, and I do. It was a 1:17 that we showed of a 10-minute answer simply to a question that said, why did you hire Brian Schottenheimer? If he seemed a little bit defensive, maybe we can understand why.
I got to tell you one thing. I have no idea what Jerry Jones said in that minute-plus clip at that point. Yeah. But you know what I did see? A visual. Dak Prescott smiling in the first row with a Washington Commanders hat on from what I saw there. So there you go, Jerry. I'm so happy. I'm rooting for Washington to win the NFC Championship game, and so be it. It's funny where you give – because Jerry's always been in the spotlight. And that's one of the detriments that if you are a coach for the Cowboys, like usually the owner stays in the background and he will meet with you privately and get his thoughts on what the team should be and maybe calling the plays himself, but it never gets released. Like Jerry's the guy that is the first interview after the game ends. No players, no coaches. He gets that. Then he has his own radio show and tells you the State of the Union address for his team every single week. So for the fact that he's basically saying, I have to have this press conference. I need the microphone because I know how bad this hire was. Like, we do segments on Pro Football Today on the Sunday desk, sell me something. Jerry Jones just had his own sell me something on why he hired him as a head coach and why he should continue to be the general manager, make every decision, which included, well, I wanted to be a coach at one time, but I wanted a big car and a big house. But by the way, coaches now do have big cars and big houses, which I don't know where he was going with that at this point here. So he was rambling all the way through, but it was simple. You should have sat up there and goes, I don't need to speak today. This man is such a good coach. He now has the microphone and the Dallas Cowboys. When Jerry was like, well, I need to go out here and put on a show just to make sure people understand why I hired Schottenheimer at the end of the press conference. I still don't know why he hired Brian Schottenheimer. How about that?
And it actually worked in reverse, DRS, because everything that he tried to say from that defensive approach almost made it seem even worse in the answer he gave right there. calling it the greatest risk of his career. To hire a head coach with zero head coaching experience, despite 14 seasons as an NFL offensive coordinator. Jerry, you just made yourself sound incredibly dumb at the earnest of trying to say that you are operating outside of your comfort zone, but you're really not, because you're bringing in a guy that has been within your organization, that had no other head coaching buzz outside of Dallas. So you're almost speaking in circles to make the decision sound foolish. If you thought that was bad, and Jerry said it, the apple don't fall all that far from the tree. All right, Stevie, you're up. Here's Stephen Jones in Dallas yesterday.
You always have to evaluate, where it didn't go right last year. And obviously we're also evaluating where it didn't go right, in terms of, this drought that people say we're in terms of a championship game or a Super Bowl. And, we just have to continue to make this roster better. It'll certainly be something that Jerry, myself, Will and his staff, and now Coach Schotty and his staff, we'll sit down and take a look and see what we have to do better. I think we got a lot of great pieces. You ask why Schotty? I think Schotty's the perfect combination of keeping some continuity, but also affecting change. And we have to support that as well.
Now that answer made everybody in Dallas as mad as you could possibly be. More than Jerry Jones getting emotional. More than his weird ramblings on why he should have been a head coach back in 1977. Stephen Jones saying in air quotes, the drought the Dallas Cowboys are on since last winning a Lombardi trophy in 1995, never even reaching the NFC Championship game. Yeah, Donnie, that drew the ire of Dallas, and so rightfully so.
And the thing I took away from that, too, is it's completely delusional. But this is, again, professional sports, being an owner is a different realm than anywhere you've ever been. If you are the CEO, let's just say, of Starbucks or AT&T or whatever, and you have to self-evaluate. Why? Because, oh, my God, we lost so much money last year. I'm going to get fired unless I make changes. The Dallas Cowboys every year will print money. So for the owner and the owner's son to say, we're going to self-evaluate to see what's happening here, there's no pressure to make any changes whatsoever. If the Cowboys go 0-17 next year, they will make more money than any other NFL team because that's what they do, being the biggest brand in sports. My takeaway here is the whole place is delusional down there because why? There's no accountability.
We'll continue next on the early line. Drought is defined as a noun, a prolonged period of abnormally low rainfall leading to a shortage of water. That is the definition of drought. But in football terms, if we were to take out the words rainfall and substitute it perhaps for playoff victories in shortage of water to shortage of Super Bowls, that would define the Dallas Cowboys. I believe that Stephen Jones needs a dictionary next to his side at every single moment. Because, Donnie, America's team in branding, and a team that had great success throughout the 80s and 90s, led by Jerry Jones, but of course Jimmy Johnson, Barry Switzer, Troy Aikman, Emmitt Smith, Michael Irvin, the list goes on and on at the Star. There was only the pinnacle of the sport, of which the Cowboys were defined by. Well, their last Super Bowl championship, as has been well documented, 1995. In the 29 NFL seasons since, nearly going on 3 decades, the Cowboys have never reached an NFC championship game. In fact, it now gets even worse because Jaden Daniels, leading the Commanders to the NFC title game this season, was Washington's first bid to the conference championship since 1991. The Cowboys are now the only team in the NFC. 16 organizations on that side of the league. The Cowboys are the only team in the NFC DRS since 2010 to not make the NFC championship game. And their drought, because it is a drought, goes back 15 years even prior to that.
It's specifically on the ownership group, and that ownership group obviously is Jerry Jones. Understand this in the evolution of Jerry Jones. He had some great ideas starting when he first bought the Dallas Cowboys. Everybody was furious that they got rid of Tom Landry. But the time had run out for Landry for the Dallas Cowboys. They wanted a new look for that franchise. He reaches out to his old college football buddy who was dominating college football in Jimmy Johnson. And understand this. Usually you'd be so happy to be an owner, like, I swung and hit the biggest home run you're ever going to see. I have the best coach in the NFL that understands what talent means to him and how these football players will play. I'm winning Super Bowl after Super Bowl. But you know what? Every time I read those press clippings, Ben, it says Jimmy Johnson is getting all the credit here. I want the credit. I own this team. So this is pre-salary cap era. Fires Jimmy Johnson, which is unbelievable. Brings in Barry Switzer. The team was so talented, they won in spite of Barry Switzer. Salary cap comes in. They haven't won since then. The reason I bring that up is because Jimmy Johnson would sit in that room and be like, Jerry, you're my good friend here. I am making every decision here, and we are winning Super Bowls. Stay out of this equation. So then they go down a little bit of a lull, and they go, you know what, Jerry Jones? I'm going to learn from the past here. Let me bring in a coach that's going to stand in front strong, have his opinions, and lead us to a championship. That was Bill Parcells. It didn't work out. And if you remember the famous quote when he was let go, which tells you everything you need to know about the ownership group, if they want you to cook the dinner, at least they ought to let you shop for some of the groceries. So basically, Bill Parcells, multi-time Super Bowl champion, NFL, Hall of Fame head coach, and Jerry Jones was saying, Bill, I don't care who you want at left tackle. I make those decisions. I make every decision as a franchise. And Parcells was like, I don't need this anymore. I'm leaving. That should tell you everything over the past 20 years now, since Bill Parcells was there, is wrong with Dallas. Because the coach is brought in as a lapdog for the Jones boys.
Brian Schottenheimer will now be the 7th head coach in Dallas. Barry Switzer, after he won that Super Bowl, was there for a few more years and then let go. Brian Schottenheimer will now be the 7th head coach since Switzer was let go in the late 1990s. And you might say, for an organization that judges itself and evaluates itself, as it would seem, only by championships in the NFC, or at least a Super Bowl championship as well, that's not all that many head coaches. Is Jerry loyal? Jerry's not loyal. Jerry likes leverage. DRS said it beautifully. It is delusional in Dallas. They are sacrificing wins and significant playoff victories just for control and still making sure the bottom line is great. Cowboys fans, I really do feel for you. I do, because you have an owner that is sabotaging his own success just so he can tell you that he's the most successful man in the room. The ego and the elite nature of which both the Jones family put on display yesterday is not one that I am jealous of, and one that I feel sorry for that Cowboys fans have to deal with. DRS, any final thoughts on Dallas and Brian Schottenheimer before we turn our attention to Aaron Glenn and his introductory press conference with the New York Jets yesterday?
Yeah, just real quick on the Cowboys, because it is amazing how they still have such a strong fan base. Like, my daughter's 13 years old, and I said, you don't understand how lucky you are to grow up in the Eagles household with 3 Super Bowl appearances since 2017. I told her when I was growing up, like, just learning about football, the first Super Bowl I watched start to finish was the Chicago Bears and the New England Patriots. But every year was like, okay, you get a Super Bowl party, but never even thought of that the Eagles could ever sniff even playing in the Super Bowl at this time. I can't imagine for, like, the Dallas Cowboys household, because you still get it now, and eventually it will change. Like, when we got 5 Super Bowl, like, nobody remembers any of that. There are no like, I'm not even sure, like, you have to go back to a VCR and plug that in to see anything of success for the Dallas Cowboys. It has been that long here. So that whole, like, once they finally get to the pinnacle and with the ratings will be there. As I joke, like 99% of the Cowboys fans never remember anything resembling a championship team or organization from one of the storied football programs that we've ever seen in the NFL. It's wild how things change. But the Dallas Cowboys to never play in an NFC championship game for 30 years with that franchise that spends more money and has more branding power than anybody, that players like Derrick Henry were like, I'll take a pay cut to play for the Cowboys. And Jerry Jones like, don't think you're good enough. Rico Dowdle's better than you. Like, that's just the craziness of the Cowboys run for the past 30 years needs to be examined.
And as you said, it is Jerry Jones and his decision-making that is actively working against his own success, trying to guide the Cowboys to a Super Bowl. We will talk about Brian Schottenheimer and Dallas's expectations entering the 2025 NFL campaign a little bit later on. Aaron Glenn also introduced yesterday in New York. all signs around Aaron Glenn is that he possesses the mentality to invigorate an organization, to fire up his team. He tried to do that in front of the media yesterday as well.
Players that's here now, put your seatbelts on and get ready for the ride. Put your seatbelts on and get ready for the ride. Listen, there are going to be some challenges, but with challenges becomes opportunity, gets opportunity. But here's what I do know. We're the freaking New York Jets, so we're built for this.
Now, that's some heat right there. That is some passion. That is some vigor from Aaron Glenn, more than they have had in New York in a long time. Of course, the word that was bleeped out rhymes with hit. DRS, what did you make of Aaron? What?
And Pat McAfee would have played that. Come on now, let's step our game up here.
Former SportsGrid, well, not employee, but Pat McAfee formerly on the SportsGrid network. We're a family-friendly program, though. But DRS, what did you make of Aaron Glenn's introductory statement to everybody in the New York metropolitan area?
Refreshing. And the reason I say this, the guys played in New York. I love that. But also, what was missing from the New York Jets? I don't know. Since Rex Ryan, let's just say, left, and the Mark Sanchez team that went to the AFC Championship game. Accountability. That team was so talented, Ben, over the past 2 years. Now, understandably, and Aaron Rodgers going down on play number 3, basically, of their season 2 years ago, that really set the franchise back. But you couldn't see coming into the season, let me get this straight. Every single position they can win at. Their defense is phenomenal. Aaron Rodgers is healthy. Weapons at wide receiver. A young, fresh backfield that you have. An offensive line that's rebuilt, but nobody had any accountability for the losses. You would watch them play an inferior opponent with talent and just get wasted out there going like, I don't understand, because it's accountability. The one thing I love about Aaron Glenn coming over from Detroit is there was as much as I hated some of the things that Detroit did, there was accountability in that room. Those players played for that coach and played for that city. That's what the Jets are missing. And I think that's not going to no longer, I think that's the point and key made yesterday is going forward, the Jets will have accountability. And I'm looking forward to see Aaron Glenn with the green.
And you need to ingratiate yourself to New York. They get behind that kind of fervor. We'll see if it actually works. And of course, we'll hear from the owner, Woody Johnson, up next. We continue with all of the quotes and the sound bites that you need from yesterday's introductory press conferences around the NFL. 4 new head coaches introduced. We spent a while in Dallas, rightfully so. Now we are in New York. We just heard from Aaron Glenn trying to fire up Gang Green's fan base. Here's owner Woody Johnson on the future of the New York Jets, and namely the quarterback position, that being Aaron Rodgers.
What's your personal feeling about Aaron Rodgers returning?
I'm going to leave that to them. They've got to take a look at how the team's composed and what they think they need and put all that together.
Woody, would you welcome Aaron Rodgers back if your coach and general manager would like to go that route?
Absolutely. Yeah, if they want him back, Aaron's a talent for sure. He's a Hall of Famer.
Will you voice your opinion on that, Woody, or is it really just on specific?
No, I'm not going to voice my opinion. Okay. No, that's up to them.
Listen, we take Woody Johnson at his word. That's a really good sign for Aaron Glenn and new Jets general manager who was introduced yesterday, Darren Moogie. So that's good news, I guess, if you are the Jets. We'll talk about Aaron Glenn's reaction to all the questions about his QB in just a moment. But, Donnie, you were shaking your head in reaction to Woody Johnson. Please explain further.
This is why the Jets have been run this way under Woody Johnson. You are the owner. Of course you're going to be there. That microphone gets in your face and says, I hired these gentlemen to make football decisions. It doesn't matter what I think. Whatever path they choose, I will support it 100%. Because he started to go down that path, and then a reporter asked him, would you like Aaron Rodgers back? Absolutely, if they want him back. You just undermined your entire football staff in one 5-second clip right there. Why did that slip get out? Because now behind the scenes the influence is, did I actually go through that GM meeting and be like, what do you want from Aaron Rodgers? And Moogie goes, well, I hope I guess this right. Love him to come back next year. That's my GM right there. Hired him right there. Understand what your job is. You could go behind the scenes and wreck your entire franchise and it doesn't matter. But just don't do it in front of the public, where now your answer was absolutely you would welcome it back. It wasn't even kept, let's just say, if I ask Kevin on the desk on Sunday, like, hey, what are you trying to do here with this general manager here? Forget about that. Or Joe. I'm asking you, Ben, like, what happens if I would have told you that my owner is absolutely saying, absolutely, I would welcome this guy back, or absolutely, I don't want him back? The answer would have been to anybody here that I ask, what are you doing here? Just say I hired these guys to run the football team. We'll find out what they do over the next coming weeks here. Instead, he said, absolutely, I'd welcome him back if my general manager wants him, which means no. You're putting that thought out there. You want him back, and you hope your general manager does too. Awful. Awful.
Right. And based on all the reports, by the way, about how things soured with Robert Saleh, how the end of this disastrous season played out in Florham Park, Woody Johnson does not seem to be a hands-off owner. Might he have other business to attend to in a certain appointment of diplomatic nature in a foreign land that could save the New York Jets and Aaron Glenn's start to his job? That remains to be seen. Aaron Glenn was asked numerous times in the actual press conference meeting with reporters off the stage yesterday about the quarterback situation. Aaron Glenn on Aaron Rodgers, quote, this thing is not about Aaron Rodgers. This is about the roster. He was asked further and basically said, you're not going to get me. I'm not telling you specifically what we are doing at the quarterback position. I don't necessarily know what they are going to do, but one thing I would hope for Aaron Glenn, because I like the guy, I hope he will be a successful head coach. He should get rid of Aaron Rodgers. It is not worth having Aaron Rodgers on your payroll as a part of your team, certainly not as a leader in your locker room. The experiment has failed. Is there a quarterback out there at the moment better than Aaron? I'd take Sam Darnold back in New York more than I would Aaron Rodgers or Kirk Cousins or somebody else. Donnie, I don't believe Aaron Rodgers is the answer at this present time for the New York Jets moving forward with a rookie head coach in Aaron Glenn.
He's not, but hear me out on this. Sometimes, human element comes in here. If you bring Aaron Rodgers back, you have a free year for the general manager and the quarterback. If it works out, you're geniuses. If it doesn't, what did you want to happen? Aaron Rodgers was fried. We couldn't get rid of him due to the salary cap restraints. But I'll tell you this right now. This will tell me a lot about this organization and the confidence of the general manager and the head coach. Because, Ben, if they do move off him and just say cut him or trade him, and they take that massive cap hit, understanding that this is the best thing for our football team, I love decisions like that. But also, I can't fault the easy decision for preserving your job is I'm going to get an extra year if I keep Aaron Rodgers around here. I do want to see what they do, because either way, you can argue for or against it. But if they cut Aaron Rodgers, that means the general manager and the head coach are in charge, and they're going to strip this thing down to the studs and rebuild it in their shape or form. That's what I'm hoping to look forward to over the next 2 to 3 weeks, because this decision can't be prolonged either, by the way.
Certainly so, DRS. And Aaron Rodgers, unlike the last time he went to the darkness and then emerged out of it, said he will not keep the New York Jets up. Yeah. Aaron Rodgers is not exactly the most truthful guy in the world, but we'll see if he holds up his end of the bargain this time around. And that's also a component of this conversation, right? Aaron Rodgers might say, I'm 41 years old. I don't really have it in the tank anymore. I'm good. I'm going to focus on other things outside of football. He could elect to retire. What a gift that would be to Darren Muge and Aaron Glenn in their first year in New York. The Jets, by the way, hold the 7th overall draft pick, so not necessarily in line as of this moment to select a quarterback in the opening round of the 2025 NFL draft. All right, we're coming up in this final minute on the break. It might be a little bit tight to hear from a couple of other head coaches that were introduced yesterday. That includes Pete Carroll in Las Vegas and Liam Cohen in Jacksonville. We will hear from both of those gentlemen on the other side of the break. We've heard from Pete Carroll a ton, not necessarily Liam Cohen. You know, one thing that stood out to me, Donnie, because we're going to make some fun of Liam Cohen, and he deserves it on the other side of the break. Although you know who Liam Cohen is, you really haven't heard him speak all that often. And anytime you hear a guy speak for the first time, just a little bit off-putting.
Yeah, maybe so. You can't match it up here. It's like sometimes you get confused. Like, how good is that football player? Why haven't I known about this football player before? It catches me off guard all the time, man. I'm going to tell you that right now. It does.
Yes, it certainly does. Once you peel back the curtain or lift the lid in certain parts, you start to learn a lot. We'll learn from Pete Carroll and Liam Cohen. 4 introductory press conferences yesterday for 4 new NFL head coaches in their new spots. 3 of the 4, first-time NFL head coach. The other one, that's Pete Carroll, who has been an NFL coach for nearly 2 decades, spent 14 seasons in Seattle, of course, was let go at the end of the 2023 NFL campaign, and now, at 73 years young, is in Las Vegas as the Raiders' new head coach. Let's hear from Pete. We'll do so right now.
Mark figured out how valuable it would be to put Tom Brady in this mix and bring that kind of football background and history. Mark made a great move, and it's our job to celebrate that for Mark and to make sure that this comes to life the way it can, with the great possibilities and the great future and the immediate future as well. My hat's off to you guys. I'm so fired up that we're doing this together, and it's going to be unique. Then they're going to be surprised what comes.
DRS, of all the press conferences yesterday, Pete and his new GM, John Spytek, seemed like they had a handle on the situation better than most, as would not be surprising for a guy that's been doing this in the National Football League for nearly 2 decades, and of course even longer at the collegiate level. You said it. Pete Carroll finding this job in Las Vegas, not necessarily about the football, but the perks that come with it and just providing that stable foundation in Sin City. Do you think Pete Carroll will have the opportunity to do so?
Look, it's like going home and you sit on your couch and you say, you know what? I just dropped my phone in between the little, seams here. You go look for your phone, you find a $20 bill. That's what Pete Carroll did. Like, I can't even believe I'm head coaching again. You kidding me? It's going to be the most fun ever. Wait till you see the surprises and the pizza parties we're going to have on Fridays and Saturday. Oh, wait, Pete. Oh, sorry. We're coaching an NFL football team at this point here. And I said this. Yeah. I love the hire for the Raiders. I think it's a fantastic hire because you're going nowhere. But you need somebody to steward that ship and say, you know what? I'm at least guiding this in the right direction, and I will make sure I leave this in a better place than I found it here. That's what I like about it. So to get excited as a Raiders fan that Pete Carroll's your head coach, not necessarily at this point, but obviously Tom Brady's pulling the strings, a complete winner on and off the football field. That's a guy that I do want to work for in an organization. As I said again, Pete's not winning anything. His only job is to be a steward of that franchise to make sure it's better in 2 years when he gets fired.
It felt comforting, though, to see Pete Carroll back in NFL circles. We'll see what Las Vegas does. 3-year contract, 4th-year team option. How involved is the new minority owner in Tom Brady, his buddy from college, and, of course, during their time in Tampa together, John Spytek, the new GM, the guy you saw to the right of Pete Carroll in yesterday's introductory presser. Liam Cohen, first-year head coach now in Jacksonville. Wild situation that led to Cohen, as we know, last week in a 48-hour window to become the new head coach of the Jacksonville Jaguars. In what county in Florida?
Jacksonville. The community. Duval.
I love it. Oh, I love it, man.
There's always one, right? Every time you go around the NFL and you have 7 vacancies, one still outstanding, by the way, that would be the New Orleans Saints. You're always going to have one press conference and one clip and one soundbite where you go, "Hey boy, you better hope this works out," or that's going to be circulated a ton. Liam Cohen saying Duval was that yesterday.
He's got to feel good, though, because honestly, is it your dream job to take over the Jacksonville Jaguars? Not necessarily when you're growing up as a kid. That's the head coaching job I want. But understand how he fell into this job. An owner that is basically beholden to him by saying, whatever you tell me, I'm going to make changes here. You want the general manager fired? You want my son fired from the organization? I probably will do that as well. Do you want more money than Ben Johnson's going to get at this point? Understand me. Do you want me to sell AEW wrestling? I will do that tomorrow, which will break the heart of some of the people working here at the SportsGrid Network. But I think it's a great job for Liam Cohen at this point now because he has every say he wants, more money than you can possibly dream of, job security out the wazoo, and also a pretty talented roster to get started with. So I think he's a big winner here.
Listen, I'll just say this. I know somebody who's not going to be involved in the TK interview on Radio Row in the Big Easy. But outside of that moment, which, of course, Liam Cohen got shelled for on social media, rather embarrassing for him. He actually did have a lot of worth to say yesterday, especially about building this organization centralized around Trevor Lawrence, a guy that he saw when he was recruiting as the offensive coordinator for Maine back in 2015, 2016, a guy that he believes in thoroughly. Again, promising building blocks for Jacksonville. Hour number 2, that's up next. We welcome you to hour number 2 live right here on a Tuesday morning on the early line on SportsGrid. He is Donnie Rightside. I am Ben Stevens. Yesterday, a Monday afternoon, chock full of introductory press conferences around the NFL. 4 new head coaches in 4 new locations introduced yesterday. Brian Schottenheimer in an emotional presser in Dallas. Aaron Glenn trying to fire everybody up with the New York Jets. Liam Cohen making his presence known in Jacksonville, and Pete Carroll there in Las Vegas. Now we go elsewhere around the NFL at this current moment. Patrick Graham, who served as the defensive coordinator for the Raiders this past season, also interviewed yesterday to be the new DC in Duval County to be on Liam Cohen's staff. Donnie, we talked about Liam Cohen and, of course, the funny soundbite where he got a little bit embarrassed yesterday around social media for what he said. But again, you said it. I will back it up. I think Liam Cohen spoke about that yesterday as well. There is a lot to be optimistic by in Jacksonville. Trevor Lawrence, yes, he has struggled, but if fully healthy, he is the face of the franchise. There is talent on that roster. The one thing actively holding back the Jaguars was the GM, Trent Baalke, who Liam Cohen got fired to become the head coach in Jacksonville. I actually do believe the Jags are going to be a competitive roster moving forward into 2025.
Absolutely. Like you had the spicy hire, right, in Urban Meyer. Didn't work out. So you had to resettle the franchise with Doug Peterson. And in the end, it didn't work out. Now you're going with the tactician on offense to take that team to the next level. So I like the progression that Jacksonville is showing where it's like, okay, we really whiffed. We got to go safe. Now that we went safe, let's get back on the winning path and have one of these young up-and-coming coaches that hopefully it turns out that he could coach here 10 to 15 years if it goes right. There's a lot to be optimistic about if you're a Jaguars backer at this point. I'm not a backer of the Jaguars, but I like what's going on down there. I do.
I will be interested to see what the win total is, 8.5, 9.5, where the number floated around this offseason. Expecting a bounce back from the Jags after a disappointing end to 2023. Of course, it was not necessarily a successful 2024, but a competitive football team despite all of the really cards stacked against them to end out the year. Pittsburgh Steelers yesterday, DRS. Art Rooney, the owner, speaking with the media at his year-end press conference and mainly had this to say about the quarterback room. He anticipates the Steelers signing either Justin Fields or Russell Wilson, but likely not both. Ideally wants more than a one-year deal at QB. That from ESPN's Brooke Pryor. What do you think Pittsburgh does this offseason at the quarterback position?
Makes a mistake like they're going to do. I'm not saying Russell Wilson can be a capable quarterback. So can Justin Fields. With each one of those quarterbacks, you can probably be 500, which that's the new standard in Pittsburgh. It's no longer Super Bowls. It's can we keep Mike Tomlin's streak alive? Because the right thing to do with a healthy franchise is understand what you watched last year is what doesn't win in the NFL long-term playoff games, making runs to a Super Bowl. The quarterback play they had, but they go, winning record again? Bring Russ back, guarantees us 9 wins. Let's get after it next year. I feel Pittsburgh is not about this. They are about being one of the best run organizations in football for decades on decades here. And it seems like they lost their way where they sort of turned into, we owe it to our fan base to have winning records. No. This fan base expects world championships. That's the expectations that you sent over the past 40 to 50 years. I can't believe that they're going to make a mistake and bring back one or even both of those quarterbacks to be the quarterback to lead the Steelers next year. It's ridiculous.
In the Steel City, the floor is always very high, but the ceiling not much higher than that floor. Success can also be a hindrance, as weird as that might sound to say, because of the fact they just keep winning football games and making playoff appearances, but never really going further than to the divisional round. They're not having a disastrous or failure of a season to really build things back up from the ground level, to draft a quarterback, to focus on the future of the franchise. And that's why the Steelers are kind of in this weird limbo of winning ways, but not championship ways at the same time.
Like, look at that division. Like Lamar Jackson is going to go to the Hall of Fame. Joe Burrow is probably going to go to the Hall of Fame. Who knows what Cleveland's going to do? They're a mess as well. But the goal is not to say, let's make sure we stay ahead of Cleveland and just have that third place in that division and win more games than we lose here. Like, you have to go toe-to-toe. And honestly, the fan base would probably be so refreshed. Like, I'm not saying you fire Mike Tomlin. But if Tomlin goes, look, it hasn't worked out. We have a great defense. I understand that. We have to find our quarterback. And you would take 2 or 3 straight years of losing records to find that next Ben Roethlisberger? Come on now. They would take that in a heartbeat to get back to true Steelers football.
The Browns have been a dumpster fire despite all of the investment in Deshaun Watson. And yet, because of how bad things got and understanding their role, they'll draft second overall, trying to turn around their franchise in one offseason. The Baltimore Ravens, speaking of the AFC North, extending offensive coordinator Todd Monken. Zach Ertz, DRS, playing against his former team in Philadelphia in the NFC Championship, saying, hey, listen, I still got more in the tank. I'm not retiring. Wants to stay, of course, with the Commanders.
Yeah, Monken, good move. Stay in Baltimore there. That team's going to be fine next year. They'll be making a run in the AFC playoffs. You know that. But also, Zach Ertz, he said something really profound after they lost that game. He's like, you know what? Taking his Philadelphia years, we had great success and won a Super Bowl. But you can see when a guy's entering the end of his career as opposed to, like, boy, if I was 22 years old coming into this league and I had Jaden Daniels as my quarterback, my goodness, the next 10 to 15 years would be so special. Yeah. So he's sort of reliving knowing that it's coming to an end. But he's still got some things left in the tank. He was showing out even in a blowout loss in Philadelphia and had a very good year for the Commanders. I would be surprised, like, hey, you know what? We're going younger at tight end. It's clear that Jaden Daniels and him have a connection. Why not bring him back again?
Absolutely so. That safety valve that was targeted, I believe, 16 times on Sunday against Philadelphia. He went over every prop associated with his name. 12 days away from Super Bowl 59 in New Orleans between the Philadelphia Eagles and the Kansas City Chiefs. So over the buildup to Super Bowl 59 in the biggest game of each and every NFL season, we are going to attack the game from every single angle, including what market movement we might see for the spread, the money line, the total from where we are right now at open to where we will be 12 days away on Sunday, February 9th in New Orleans, Louisiana. DRS, it's time to play Guess the Line. And, of course, we start with the spread, where it opened and where it is right now. 1.5 in favor of Kansas City. Where will it be on February 9th? I'm sorry. Who's that? Is that like a generic Chiefs person? Just to understand what we have on the screen.
It is a generic guy. The guy doesn't play or make money for anybody who bets on him. Yeah, it is a generic guy. Yep, that is him.
Generic.
Mm-hmm.
I can't.
I
also didn't hear anything because
the guy,
our studio equipment's working well today.
Yeah, the guy doesn't make anybody money who bets on him, so he is generic.
Yeah,
yes,
for sure.
So
it is generic. DeAndre Hopkins there on the right side of that screen. Anyway, guess the line where it is right now. 1.5 in favor of Kansas City. We are not talking money line just yet. The spread, DRS. Where do you think the closing number will be as we get to kick on February 9th in the Big Easy?
I'm going to say it stays in the 1 range, which means 1.5 to 1. I don't think it flips to a favorite towards the Philadelphia Eagles at -1 either. I don't think it gets to 2 or 2.5 because the information that's going to come out from today until Super Bowl Sunday, right? Sometimes you have to analyze that. If you just look at the FanDuel Sportsbook, 53% of the bets coming in on Kansas City, 58% of the money. That's roughly even. That's not enough to push it around depending on where sharps and squares are coming in on just yet here. But that number will start to change. Why? Because I do think some information that Kansas City, completely healthy ball club. Like, what are you like outside of somebody got hurt on Kansas City in practice? You're not anticipating any changes here. The one thing I do think people will buy into the Philadelphia Eagles on a point is, okay, Cam Jurgens, who didn't play in the last game, says he's going to be fine. Just some back spasms built up during the week, couldn't shake him. I'll be fine Super Bowl Sunday. Then Landon Dickerson goes back to guard, and he has a week and a half to 2 weeks to heal up on that knee. So they'll be full go. Saquon Barkley, who shot out of a cannon in the playoffs. Why, Ben? Because he didn't have to play Week 18 against the New York Giants. Now he gets 2 weeks off to be extra ready. And also, where were the question marks on Sunday afternoon with the Philadelphia Eagles? Yeah, we were focused on the offensive line, but the talk all week was, boy, can Jalen Hurts even stand in the pocket or be functional? He looked functional and has 2 extra weeks to prepare to get ready for this game and rest that knee. So the reason I'm getting down to is the positives coming out aren't going to come from Kansas City other than, yeah, we know Andy Reid off a bye week, Patrick Mahomes is great, and that's fine. But now you're saying, boy, the Eagles hung 55 and looked really good on their playoff run, and they're going to get even fresher and healthier before they take on the Kansas City Chiefs. That's why I don't think it's going to 2. And if I had to say, just give me an answer point blank, I'll say -1 Chiefs on Super Bowl Sunday.
I don't think this line is going to move. Maybe it's foolish.
Yeah.
Maybe it's naive.
Yeah.
I believe Kansas City will be a 1.5 favorite by the time we get to kick on February 9th around 6:30 p.m. Eastern time to start Super Bowl 59. Here is why. I don't think the odds makers want the Chiefs as the underdog at all, because then you would get a slew of Chiefs money, probably from sharps, but also from the public bettor who, as much as they hate Kansas City, would say, how can you bet against the Chiefs as an underdog in yet another Super Bowl? I don't think the Chiefs will ever be listed as a dog for Super Bowl 59. They were the 2.5-point underdog for Super Bowl 57 against Philadelphia, but that was a different time. The Chiefs had not started their 2 consecutive streak of winning a Lombardi trophy. That line actually opened very briefly in favor of KC and quickly flipped in the a couple of minutes span to Philadelphia as the favorite. But here is where I think we see the most movement, and we already are starting to see it, DRS. That is the money line. It was -130 when I saw these numbers right after the AFC Championship game on the FanDuel Sportsbook on Sunday night. A -130 money line number in favor of KC. When we were discussing the early odds yesterday, -132. A little bit of movement, -124 now in favor of the Chiefs. You guys are talking about a couple of pennies. We understand that, but that would be the movement. And in a game that is expected to have this tight of a margin, it is noteworthy. Another thing that the FanDuel Sportsbook is great at doing, DRS, when you click on stats, it provides where the money is coming. Not in the consensus marketplace, but just on FanDuel. At open, more than 60% of both the money on the spread and the percentage of spread bets, just in terms of that, on Kansas City. Those numbers starting to dwindle. 58% of the money on the spread backing KC. Only 53% of the bets on the spread now backing the Chiefs, which shows me people early starting to bet on the Eagles. Maybe they believe they have an edge with the Birds, or just the idea, DRS, somebody other than Patrick Mahomes, Andy Reid, and the Chiefs need to win a Lombardi trophy, and that's why we're seeing some early movement in the money line, because that's where I believe the odds makers are willing to move the market at the moment.
Yes, and we're going to analyze this repeatedly right up till next Sunday here and say, why are you guys talking about cents on the money line here? Because that is a big difference. We're now isolating one football game with 50 times the amount of eyeballs, money, tickets, you name it here. So this is the one game. If you would pick out, Ben, one game, and I know Monday Night Football is big, Thursday Night Football is big, standalone football Sunday night, we get that. But when you look at the Super Bowl, everybody gets involved in it now. And it's no longer like in the back rooms, like, hey, Sharp Joe down the street in his corner book has this. Like, no, this is the FanDuel Sportsbook. Legalized gambling in the United States, where you get to actually get a window into where the money is going and how much is changing right in front of your eyes. And this is the one game that you would look toward to say, where is the public actually going? Where are the moms, the dads, the part-time gamblers just have to get involved? Where is that money going? Is it just, it's Patrick Mahomes and only laying 1.5 points, you just have to win? Or is it, no, the Eagles actually have a better overall football team, man for man, than the Kansas City Chiefs do? That's what we're going to analyze and see where it goes. So we are looking at 58%, as you said, the percentage of the money with the spread on the Kansas City Chiefs, and then just the spread tickets themselves without the money at 53%. I think it's going to be more around that 50-50 type split once we get to Super Bowl Sunday, but we never know where the public's going to come in late, because we're in that lull pattern, Ben, this week, right? You have the hits as soon as you see the lines, you have the fervor on a Monday, then it sort of settles in. Then Super Bowl week starts to creep in. Then Thursday and Friday, that's when the big boys start to fly in, and the $1 million wagers go left and right in. Who's betting what? So keep an eye on that. But we're in that lull period right now, just having fun seeing where these lines sit.
Super well said. If there was movement, it happened late on Sunday evening and on Monday morning. We are probably not going to see this line, even the money line, move all that much in the next 7-8 days. But then you get to Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, entering the weekend. Everybody, public better, sharp better, big better, small better, they start to come in and look at those Super Bowl numbers. What is it going to do to the number then? That remains to be seen. But, Donnie, I guess we're being slightly boring in our first guess the line in terms of the spread. Still expected to be 1.5 in favor of Kansas City.
I'll change my pick.
I believe the Chiefs. What?
You want me to change my pick for you, Ben, to make it exciting? Eagles minus 6.5 on Super Bowl Sunday. There, I said it. How about that? Stamp that. Approval.
Really good stuff. Would you lay it?
Of course. Alt it. Somebody on this network always says alt it. I don't know who that guy is, but sounds like maybe an alt opportunity here on the Philadelphia Eagles in this game. How about that?
The human algo has already received some information based on what that one named individual might do there in New Orleans. Again, I believe the Chiefs will remain the favorite for Super Bowl 59. And again, if it sounds silly to discuss a couple of cents on the money line, think about our last two games that were basically a pick'em in the AFC. Buffalo, Baltimore, game decided by 2, 27-25. KC, Buffalo, game decided by 3, down to the closing moments once again. How about the total for Super Bowl 59? Next. Guess the line continues early, 12 days out from Super Bowl Sunday and Super Bowl 59. It's the Chiefs, it's the Eagles, two dominant defenses all season long around the National Football League, but a ton of star power on the offensive side as well. So what does that do for the thought on the total? 49.5 is that number currently. Where will it be on Super Bowl Sunday, 12 days away, February 9th? DRS, 49.5 right now. Where will it be in just about 2 weeks?
You know, Sharp Side, Donnie says that number probably should be at 48.5 come game time here. Two really good defenses, big stage, 2 weeks to prepare. You know, obviously the offense gets the 2 weeks together, but we're talking about two really good defenses in the upper echelon of the NFL this season. But also I understand this is a public game that they're going to come in and say, hold on now. You see what the Philadelphia Eagles can do on offense? It's Patrick Mahomes on the other side. I just watched the NFC Championship game. You know, 55 points were one side, cruising like around 80 points. And then I also watched the AFC game in colder temperatures, end up with one team with 32, the other team with 29 points. And we're supposed to expect that these two teams with explosive players all over the place, world championship quarterbacks, great, obviously, offensive minds, and think this game in a dome is going to stay under 50 points? Yeah, 50.5. So I'm going to say, if I had to put my money on it right now, where this line is going, I'm still going to stick with under the 49.5, which means 49 or below. But I can't push forward next week when you know everybody is going to get so excited and bet this bad boy into the 50s. But I'm going to stick with it. I'm going to say this line goes lower than the 49.5 when it's all said and done on Super Bowl Sunday.
I completely agree. I think the closing number is going to be 48.5. The under already has the juice, minus 115. If you want to go under 49 and a hook, minus 105 to the over. Is it monumental juice? Is it drastic? No, not in terms of the VIG just yet. But I do believe this number is going to work down and close at 48.5. That does not mean I believe it is the right side. Donnie, we talked about this yesterday. When you look at the team totals, 25.5 for KC, 23.5 currently for Philadelphia. I think both teams are going to flirt with that number, which means the margin of keeping this game under is not all that large and would certainly be a sweat. Two great defenses, but two astounding offenses as well, although the Chiefs have not been overwhelmingly successful offensively. But they still scored 32 against Buffalo. The Bills are not the defense that Philadelphia is. I understand that. I do think the number closes at 48.5. I don't necessarily believe, though, that the market movement will have that correct. I still think we see some points in Super Bowl 59.
Yes, me too. And also, I'm just scrolling down here on the FanDuel Sportsbook, trying to find where the, there we go. Eagles team total, 24.5. Kansas City team total, 24.5. So the question always comes out is, can you put yourself in a realm where it's like, okay, we have a legitimate chance at this, which means I would be shocked if we come Super Bowl Sunday and see that final score with one of these teams, or both of them, let's just say, in the teens. Both of these teams are going to move the football regardless of how good those defenses are. Both will be aggressive on fourth downs, trying to trade 3 for 7 points. So if you said, I'm going to tell you right now, I don't know the scores, but both of these teams will at least be 20 points or above, you got to take the over at that point. So that's generally where I lean, even though we've seen Super Bowls and teams pressing and bad turnovers and 2 great defenses where it's like, hey, 24-21 is a legitimate final score in the Super Bowl. 27-21, which right now would still have you on the under. That's a legitimate score here. So just because they both get into the 20s doesn't mean they get the over. But
right,
if you're saying just percentage-wise, I'm going to tell you right now, both of these teams at least 20 or more, you got to take the over at that point, right?
And yesterday, that move, 25.5 was the number for KC. Yeah. The under had the juice. 23.5, of course, a key number for Philadelphia. The over had the juice. Both now at 24.5, which should tell us a few things. The total is working down ever so slightly because the Chiefs have even money on 24 and a hook, and the Eagles have the juice on the under, but also how close this game is expected to be if both teams have the same exact point total for a Super Bowl. 5 of the last 6 Super Bowls have stayed under, just so you know. All right, DRS, let's talk some of the players on the offensive side of the football that will directly impact how much offense and how much scoring we see come 12 days from now, including the NFL's best running back having a historic and record-setting season. That would be Saquon Barkley. His number at the moment is 112 and a hook. What will Saquon's number be come his very first Super Bowl 12 days from now in the Big Easy?
It's going over the 112.5. I honestly think this might line up at 115.5 to 118.5 in that range. The reason I say that, too, is because this line is going to get pushed around. And it's the same, like he had 115 yards and didn't hit his total in the last game. Now, granted, did you need him to get the extra yards at the end of the game? No. And Dallas Goedert was getting handoffs and Will Shipley was getting handoffs, which he probably could have easily got through the 115. But the one thing we do know is Saquon probably, if the game script is correct, will get 20 carries in this game. Is there a sane, I don't care about good of the Chiefs defense. Is there a sane person that says if I can guarantee Saquon with 20 carries, he's not going through 112.5? And I know that's not the question. This is just the way I'm answering it and playing it out. No, he is going to hit a home run. He is going to have a 30-yard plus run. He is going to be involved in this football game. This game is priced at a -1.5, which we're expecting, Ben, to be within one possession in the fourth quarter where Saquon's going to get carries. First quarter, second quarter, third quarter, and fourth quarter all the way through. I don't think there's anybody out there now, sharp, non-sharp public, is going like, you know what? I'm going to take that under 112 now. You're going to wait on that number and go, you know what? I might not bet it. But if it does go 115.5, 118.5, 120.5, now you take the under. There is no value to me on 112.5. It only is going to go higher for me, Ben.
Completely agree. I would guess the line and move this thing up to 114.5, 115 and a hook by the time we play in Super Bowl 59. Saquon's number for the NFC Championship game, 125.5. The Chiefs are so much better up front than that of the Commanders. But James Cook still had 13 carries for 85 yards and 2 touchdowns. Saquon's number right now, rushing plus receiving, 130.5. Kind of like that number at this moment. If I believe the rushing yards prop is going to go up and you add in the receiving game for Saquon Barkley as well. Quickly go.
One thing, too, Kenneth Gainwell, concussion. If he's not cleared, you're right. More passes for Saquon.
We'll talk the quarterbacks up next as we continue to guess the line on the early line. So we were just discussing Saquon Barkley. His rushing yards prop at the moment is 112 and a hook. Where will the number be 12 days from this very moment on Super Bowl Sunday in New Orleans? Both Donnie and I believe that will be on the rise. 114.5, 115.5, maybe even higher if there is the public love behind that number, and expecting another big play or two from Saquon Barkley against the Chiefs defensively. But it should be noted at this moment, we'll talk Patrick Mahomes in just a second. Jalen Hurts' rushing yards prop is 40.5. It was 31.5 for the NFC Championship game because of the uncertainty around that left knee injury. And Ertz was not exactly mobile, despite scoring 3 rushing touchdowns, 10 overall carries for just 16 total yards. But what the long layoff of Super Bowl preparation can do, Donnie, expecting him to be as close to 100% as you could hope for, and of course more active in terms of utilizing his own legs come Super Bowl Sunday.
And what do we like about Kansas City's defense? It's good. So normally you say to yourself, like, wait, I don't want to bet any quarterback props against a really good defense. Well, we'll talk about Patrick Mahomes against a good defense in just a few moments. But from a running perspective, you know what Spags does. His job is to generate pressure. And if you have a mobile quarterback and the pressure gets home and you can get out of it, there are running yards that you can pick up. So, Ben, you are astute there by saying we haven't seen the best of Jalen Hurts. And think of this. He only had 16 yards. Keep in mind, he had about, 15, 20-yard rushing touchdown that got called back. But the fact that wasn't what I was looking at. The 10 carries on a leg that maybe thought wasn't as good. So we can anticipate, Ben, if I told you right now, Jalen Hurts will get 10 carries in the Super Bowl. Some might come on kneel down, some on tush pushes. You would take the over 39.5 to 40.5 every single day of the week because you're factoring one of those runs is probably at least 10 to 15 yards.
28.5 is the rushing yards prop for Patrick Mahomes, a number that he continues to just fly over. Had 10 carries in the AFC Championship game for 46 yards and multiple scores. But the passing yards prop is where we go with Patrick. Currently at 251.5 and a little bit shy of 2 weeks, DRS. What is this number by the time they kick in New Orleans for Super Bowl 59?
255.5, I'm going to the over. Now, if your game script is Kansas City wins this game, it still should be going over 255.5. If your game script is in the fourth quarter, Kansas City is losing, it still should be going 255.5 or over. Because understand this. In the past, maybe we were looking at Kansas City's offense being more like, hey, you know what? They could be efficient on the ground, which they can be, but they're not explosive on the ground anymore. Isaiah Pacheco is a really hard runner, and you thought maybe the trajectory of his career, or at least early on, was, man, this guy can break long runs. He can carry 15, 16 times, 70, 80 yards on the ground. That's no longer the case. Kareem Hunt has done a fine job as a veteran backup, but he's no longer that young, explosive guy that we saw come on the scene originally with Kansas City. So my game script is always Patrick Mahomes to win this football game for Kansas City is not handing it off, Ben, and having 177 yards and 1 touchdown and no interceptions. Patrick Mahomes has to be the Patrick Mahomes we know and love in the Super Bowl, which means the 251.5 for me, that betting public is going to see them like, regardless of game script, it's going to have to be on Patrick Mahomes' shoulder to win this game. I'm going 255.5 as that closing number on Super Bowl Sunday.
I'll go up a little bit. 253.5 is my number. I don't believe we're going to see many props drop in the next 2 weeks or so, especially on those star players. And I think that number is very, very fair for Patrick Mahomes. Donnie, you know that my favorite yardage bet for conference championship weekend was Patrick Mahomes over 249.5. The number closed at 258 and a hook for Patrick Mahomes. He came up short, only 245 against Buffalo. And we talked about how illustrious his numbers have been in the AFC Championship game. One of the great things about Mahomes and the Chiefs about to play in their 5th Super Bowl in the last 6 years is you have such a sample size on one guy in a specific scenario in the biggest football game of a season. Last year, 333 yards against San Francisco, against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers back in 2020. He had 270 yards, but a couple of interceptions. Against the 49ers in his first Super Bowl, 286. What was the one Super Bowl I left out? 182 yards and 3 touchdowns against Philadelphia. So maybe not all that prolific through the air, but very efficient. 3 touchdowns, 21 of 27. I still think he flirts with the number. I don't know if I'll feel as confident in betting the over as I did for the Chiefs in the AFC title game.
The only thing I'm worried about, Ben, the over-under on the NFL coming in and be like, you know what? We don't like this turf inside the Superdome. Let's bring a brand new turf in here that's nobody's ever used before and have the Eagles on ice skates to give Mr. Mahomes another chance at victory. That's the only over. I want the under on that. Give me a clean surface, which we should have. Right. Let's get revenge. Let's get revenge, people.
This is the theme for Philadelphia. Hour 3 next.